everyone, and welcome back to the Hazardous Artist Series, episode 14 Snacks. That's right, guys. We are in Halloween, and what better way to show the spoopy than to show a snack? Yeah, sure, I drew it kind of like a cutesy animal. And it's part of the cutesy animal series, because I actually love snakes. But yeah, so we're on a snake this week. And I actually specifically chose this not just because it's spoopy season, but because the way that I color in this video is different than the way I color in episode 1 of the Hazardous Artist series. So I'm going to talk about that today. And it doesn't really look like there's much going on because in the Hazardous Artist series episodes, I don't really show much of the behind the scenes between each layer. So back in the olden days, back when I was still doing speed paints rather than Hazardous Artist videos, I would just color outside the lines and just let bygones be bygones. And now I don't do that anymore. And so when I colored outside the lines, I'd have to take an extra time to erase all of the extra color out of the lines outside of my art piece. And I thought, okay, this is really tedious, but I don't care, I guess. And I decided, I started watching TikToks, really, art TikTok specifically. And the way that they were doing it, they would do their highlights and their shadows and not color outside the lines. And I was like, epiphany! And I wanted that too. And I didn't know how to do it until I saw a tutorial on doing clipping groups, which is grouping a layer, and then in that group, you could alpha lock other layers within that group, which gives you the ability to shade and highlight without going outside of the layer, essentially. And I liked it, so I wanted to give it a try, and I tried it on a couple of art pieces, and I was absolutely amazed with how easy it was. And while I'm not very fond of doing what I did with the snake, with the outlining of the whole art piece, it makes it much, much easier for me to do the highlighting and the shading when I don't have to go outside the lines to do it. And that's kind of where we are. So right now, I am putting down the base color of the snake, which is red. As you will see later, I changed the color because I really didn't know which kind of snake I wanted to draw, or color, I mean, because there's so many snakes and they have so many different patterns to them. So when I was a kid, if you've listened to some of my older Hazardous Artist series episodes, I love snakes. My brother and I would go out and look for them. So there are so many variations in coloration in snakes. They go from reds to blues, yellows, oranges, blacks, grays, browns. There's so many colors that a snake can have. And, all the really, really pretty colored snakes are in the Amazon or in tropical rainforesty kind of places that I want to go. But money and COVID kind of prevent me from doing all of that. So here I am. I just changed the color. It looks black, but it's actually like a very, very dark green. And the reason is because the snake that I'm doing is, is my favorite snake from my home state of Missouri, and it is the mud snake because it is so beautiful. And I've only seen one in the wild my entire life, so they're pretty uncommon. They are a swamp snake. So normally you would see them in the water or just moving around, but they're very uncommon to see. And there's this one swamp that my brother and I would go to, and several other people who shared in our interest. And there would always be an indirect kind of competition to see who would see a mud snake that weekend, because usually when there's groups that go to this particular swamp, only one of those several groups or two of those several groups will see a mud snake, because that's how uncommon they really are. You just don't see them. And I think when I saw them when I was a little kid, we were lucky because it had just rained, and so the swamp kind of like flooded over parts of the road. So we were very lucky that time. So I'm just adding more color to the base color layer that I'm using. And then I'm kind of just figuring out to erase or to add black. And I decided to add black because that is what's on the underside of this snake is black and red. And I used a photo reference because even though I remember what they look like, I didn't remember what their belly pattern looked like. So yeah, I had to use a reference. No shame and no judgment. Like, it's okay to use a reference even if you know what they look like. I'm just gonna put that out there for all my other artist friends who might feel guilty about using references for things that they know. Anyway, so I'm just adding more base color to this. I haven't gotten to the shading or the highlighting of this particular piece yet, but it is coming. So and I added an extra layer to this so that if I had to erase, I could do so without actually erasing the entire, like, the reds or the green portion of this piece. So yeah, I'm just adding more colors. So mud snakes are I guess they kind of live up to their name because swamps are kind of muddy anyway. But yeah, they're just pretty uncommon. But they're really, really pretty to see. So if you ever get a chance to go to a zoo and you see a snake that's like black on top or like really, really dark olive green on top, and then you just see the red and the black on their belly, they are really pretty and a very beautiful snake that we have here in the States. I like coral snakes, but they're kind of venomous. So, because usually when you see red or blacks or yellows or oranges, that usually signifies to predators that they are poisonous or venomous. And yeah, so typically when you see color patterns like that, they are venomous, minus the milk snake because they have red and black, but they are not venomous to us. So yeah, it's just one of those very interesting things that snakes do to warn predators. And it's not just snakes, it's like every animal in the kingdom that has these types of colorations are normally poisonous or venomous, but not always. It's really the type of mimicry that they do to, you know, kind of tell predators, hey, I'm venomous, but they're bluffing. They got that poker face going on, so they don't have to tell predators that they're actually not venomous or poisonous. I always do wonder about that and just wonder how many predators actually went after an animal with these types of colorations to actually determine that these colorations are bad for them. So it's kind of like with people, like how many people did it take for them to realize that these berries are edible and these berries are not, or these mushrooms are edible and these mushrooms are not, and this mushroom right here makes you look like you're going through Wonderland, you know? So there's a part of me that always wonders, like how far back in our like timeline did animals and people realize that these colorations meant very bad, like they're very beautiful, but So here I am adding the shadows and kind of erasing because I had to determine where my light source is. When you're doing an art piece, you have to figure out where the light source is. If you're like me and you wing it, it's never gonna work out. And I always say that, like, when I wing it, I normally wing it. Most of the time I wing it. And I say this because most of the time I don't know where my light source is gonna be. So if I'm doing an art piece and I'm sitting there and I go, okay, I don't know where my light source is, my default source will be in the top left corner. And I always, it's always my default. Or the top left corner or right above, but lately I've been trying to get more of a light source. So here it is a default, it's on top. My light source is up above the snake, so that's where my highlighting is coming in with here. And I'm just adding quick highlights, making sure they don't overlap anywhere, and just trying to figure out which color makes a good highlight for this particular snake. It was kind of difficult, I think, because I couldn't figure out which color matched the snake well enough, I guess. And with snake skin, especially if they've just shed, they have a very nice sheen to their scales. So a part of me was also trying to convey that in this piece, and then I forgot to turn on alpha lock, but I turn it on later, I think. When you turn on alpha lock, all the things outside the lines just disappear, which is really nice. It means I do less um erasing. And so yeah, I'm just blending in all my highlights. I always blending my highlights and my shadows. It is because I like my soft shadows. To me, they look more realistic, even though I know for a fact, because I'm staring at one right now, that shadows can be sharp and highlights can also be sharp. And the highlights I'm more likely to do sharper in some areas. Like if I'm adding a sheen or if I want to emphasize a part of my art piece, I will actually add a sharp highlight to it, or so a sharp highlight. So that would be like my little I'll just do like a little circle and you can fill it in. Or I'll do like right there. Right there was a great example. Here we go. So I'll do the little dots on the piece, and sometimes I'll add lines like what I'm trying to do here. I don't think it really worked out for this particular piece because I wasn't sure if I really liked the line, but yeah. And then I blended in because I thought, oh, that didn't look great. And sometimes I'll do that. I'll add a sharp highlight and then I'll go in with like a soft blender tool and just go over it very lightly and before I go with the rest of the piece, because sometimes to me sharp highlights only work sometimes. They don't always work, and so I do the blending. And that's a little weird because people do sharp highlights and sharp shadows all the time. And anime, that's pretty much all they do is sharp shadows. The older anime. Some of the newer anime, you can see some blending in some of their shadows, which is nice. But the world is full of sharp shadows, but there's also soft shadows as well. And I'm not that type of person. And I'm okay with this. I'm not a realistic artist. I don't pretend to be a realistic artist. I do like my shading and my highlights to be a little bit more realistic, but in the end product, I just like the way it looks. Like, you see, the snake has more of a defined shape. You can tell it's curling and that it has a rounder shape. And that's kind of what I want when I do my shading and my highlighting, is that I want to show that in the piece, that there is a particular and specific shape happening in this piece. And that's why I like my shadows and my highlights to be a little bit more realistic. Um, and, you don't have to do it this way either. A lot of artists, I feel like, feel they need to do things a certain way, and that's not true. If you're looking for a particular style, then maybe. But even then, I think artists just give themselves too much, like, bad credit on themselves for it. You need to look for your own style. And you do whatever you can. You take from other sources and you blend them and you compile them and you make your own. And it took me forever to find my own style. And yeah, and this is what happens when you find your own style. And you can tell there's definitely inspiration from other artists and other genres of art styles, and that's okay. That is okay. In this world, there's really not much in the way of uniqueness when it comes to artwork. But when you compile and you combine, then you come up with your own unique style. And That's very important as an artist. So here I am. The eyes are always my favorite. I love doing eyes because I like to experiment with some of the stuff. So here I added the base colors and I added the shading. And then I did sharp highlights. When I do my eyes, I always add sharp highlights. And it's so weird because I hate doing sharp highlights everywhere else, but the eyes always have sharp highlights. And then I added an extra layer and turned down the opacity. And the opacity determines like how sharp and vibrant it is, or how soft and transparent it is. And so I do that. I'll add two colors that are similar in the eye color, and not all the time. It depends on which eye color I'm going with. But for here, I use two warm colors because they kind of bring out the eyeball a little bit more when I do that. So, and then I add some nice little spots. It's a particular brush. If you guys use art programs, it's the star brush. And yeah, so that is the end of our video, you guys. If you did like this video, then hit that like button, comment below on any questions you want to know about, any details I might have missed when I was talking about this particular piece, and share with everyone you know. And if you guys want some more fun, then come join me on Saturday with Jesse and Tori as we get into more spoopy stuff. And this week is especially creepy. Ooh, so you should definitely come. It'll be fun and creepy, and you'll just find out what I'm gonna draw, because I never know until usually the day of when I'm gonna draw. So, you guys, unfortunately, had to end the video. I will see you all next week, but until then,
dare to create. Also, like the second time in 2 weeks that I had to do this as a separate recording. Thanks everybody for watching. Bye.